Back to low self-esteem, the spirituality of low self-esteem, the biology of low self-esteem, and we left off part 1 at when do we start to understand our worth, our value, our esteem? How do we esteem ourselves? We esteem ourselves in relation to others right from the word go, right from infancy, going up to toddlerhood, childhood, adolescence, all the relationships that we then form up until our brain is fully developed, which can take up to 28 years. Now, as your brain is developing, what you are now gathering from your environment is a sort of value system, is a system of worth. It starts with your caregivers, it seeps into teachers, family, friends, everything, your entire environment. However it is that the environment outside of you is reacting and responding to you is what you will take as the marker of what your value is, what your self-worth is, what your self-esteem is. Except there's a little bit of a caveat there. Now, if your primary caregivers, so your home, right? Now, your home is a safe nest. It's a safe haven. This is the one place, if you like, where you're connected with your umbilical cord, where you want to go back to rejuvenate, then you come back and you carry on experiencing life. So that is the one place that replenishes you and will give you all the tools you need in order for you to reflect back into yourself, your true value, your true worth, your esteem. So our parents, our mother, father, grandparents, those that we are most attached to, right? Those that we most look up to as our initial mirrors will mirror back our self-value, will mirror back everything. Now, if you're somebody who has gone through child abuse, who have gone through sex abuse, between all this time period, by the time your brain is developed, or even after, which we'll come back to at another time, another post, then what you're taking on is my value is that this is what happens to me. My value is that I amount to all that is happening to me. I amount to the way that I am being treated by everybody else, especially if you then don't have a sounding board at home, especially if at home you are told, or maybe they're not so open about discussing these things. Maybe to them, you're just not good enough just the way you are. And they may think that we are doing you a favor by pushing you really, really hard, right? Now, if you're pushed really hard, you might be exhausted. If you were anything like myself, I was involved in every extracurricular activity to the point where the head teacher made a point to contact my mother and say to her, I want her to come and participate in this as well. Not only was I sports captain, house captain, prefect, name it. I was doing everything. The editor of the school magazine, plays, playback, singing, and just so many things, right? And my mother said, no, she's got too much on her plate. And I want her to focus on her studies, which I did. But you could have, on the other hand, somebody, a parent not in tune with their child and saying, yeah, why not, right? On the other hand, you might have a parent that says to you, when you bring home a prize, oh, is that the best you could do? Or may not even acknowledge it, or may acknowledge it, but you're not fully present in your acknowledgement. You're not fully present and you're not fully engaged in the sense of pride that you feel with your child. And children pick up on every single emotion, every single thing, which is why children will not shape out in according to what you told them, but in accordance to what you showed them as who you were, right? So again, another post. Back to low self-esteem. Now, if everything in your environment so far was reflecting back everything that you're not, right? Or it was showing you back things like you are just capable of abuse, right? You are just a doormat. And if no matter what you did, your parents said, try harder, more, right? And if you were a child who was constantly seeking approval, you'll find in your life that even when things are going well, you never will really feel good enough, right? If your mother or father were emotionally distant, if there wasn't any of that unconditional love, no matter what, right? The way that you were dealt with, if was your environment a no environment? Was it a yes environment? Right? So all of those things play up. Now, as you are going through your spiritual awakening process, right? So you understand, you recognize that, oh, I'm going through a spiritual awakening. And all these things come up to the surface. And you will have the tools of how to recognize that you're going through a spiritual awakening. Now, during the spiritual awakening, you will go through what we call the inner child healing. Your inner child healing literally means that you heal those parts of you that were developmentally arrested. You heal those parts of you that are not whole, they are fragmented. So you're making them whole again by saying, no, this child who is a bit feeling that I am in pieces, you put them back together again. But of course, as we know, if you were to fix something, a pot falls or something breaks and you put it, you can see the tear. You can band-aid it, but you can see the tear. But with the spiritual awakening, eventually you cannot even see that scarring. You can't see that tear anymore, and that scarring on that tear will cease to have any impact or effect as you are more integrated in your spiritual awakening. What your spiritual awakening does is it gives you the gift of self with a capital S, and you realize that I am the self. I am the self. And as I am enough, because the self is self-sufficient, right? The self is already whole. So the one suffering from the low self-esteem is the individuate sense of self that carries I am the body as the consciousness. Yeah, that I am the mind and I am the body that has been conditioned in a certain way. But it's not as easy as that. For those of you who have been there and are going through that, your low self-esteem will keep popping up here, popping up there. You'll think, oh, why am I being affected by this? And then you'll be reminded, it's that little girl, that little boy who learned to esteem themselves in relation to the others, in relation to how the environment, how the outside relates to us. And therefore we relate to that. And then it becomes a vicious cycle, because that's what we are used to as us. And so that's what we are constantly going to call back to us by way of what we attract, right? So the universe never makes a mistake. You will always ever get in your life that which you identify with as who you are. It's just a matter of either you're aware of what you are or what you think you are, or you're not aware of. Gradually, with the spiritual awakening, it will not matter, because that individuate sense of self will dissolve. Now remember, folks, when you're initially going through the spiritual awakening, right, or that stage of bliss, that stage of Satchitananda, right, at that point, the pain body won't feel so prominent. Stay tuned for part 3 coming back again.